Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk about self-control, and then we are going to talk about perspectives. So last class we did talk a little bit about self-control, and you took a behavior test type of thing. And self-control is the ability to control your behavior regardless of what you are thinking or feeling. Now, before I go over, I told you guys in last class, if you remember, that when you total up your points, to remember that number. So if you didn't complete that assignment, please go back and complete that before moving forward with this video. And if you did complete it, but you don't remember your number, please go back and check what your number was, because the next slide is going to kind of talk about what that number means. And again, before I move to the next slide, it is important to note that people your age, their brain is not fully developed. And it's a fact. It's not fully developed. So most importantly, this part of your brain here, which is known as the frontal lobe. And the frontal lobe is responsible for decision making. It's responsible for thinking. It's responsible for those quick reactions without taking a step back and thinking. So keeping that in your mind, right, we'll move on to the next slide. So the behavior checklist that I had you guys do last class. If you scored less than a 10, that means you have high self-control. You're able to control yourself regardless of how you're feeling or thinking. If it's between 11 and 15, your self-control is lacking at times. If it's between 16 and 20, your self-control needs work. And if it's between 21 and 30, your self-control needs a lot of work. Now, sometimes when people look at this, they go, oh my gosh, like I scored a 20 or I scored an 18 or, is that bad? And the answer is no. It's not that it's so much as a bad thing. It's more normal at your age. Now, again, people are different, right? We're raised different. We grow up differently. Our genetics are different. So if you are in the less than 10 or between 10, 11 and 15, that's a good thing, right? I mean, you've learned to cope. You've learned to be able to calm yourself or think before you speak or not react right away. But if you are in the higher numbers, it's not necessarily a bad thing, and it is normal because, again, kids your age, your brains, your frontal lobe is not fully developed. So it's very difficult sometimes for people your age to control themselves and to actually think about, okay, wait, what are the consequences if I'm very angry at this person and I punch them in the face? Like, I wonder what the consequences will be. Okay, well, if I'm in school, I might get suspended. I might get in a lot of trouble. I might get my phone taken away from my parents, right? Sometimes we don't think about that. Sometimes we get so angry, we let our emotions get a hold of us, and we punch that person. That's just an example, all right? So again, your frontal lobes are not fully developed, so your self-control might not fully be there yet. And your frontal lobe actually does not fully become developed until the age of 25. Now, there are a few different types of people, of behavior, of the way that people act. Okay, and you might have heard these words before, and maybe you weren't fully knowledgeable of the definitions or what that looks like. So the first one is called passive. Being passive is not standing up for what you want. It's more of a person who's more laid back, goes with the flow, doesn't really make all the decisions, allows the people around them to make the decisions. So, for example, if you're with a group of friends and they're like, what movie do you guys want to watch? You might want to watch Batman. I don't know, I just made that up. And everyone else wants to watch Spider-Man. But you're not going to say anything because you're just like, whatever, like everyone else wants to do it, like it's cool, Not necessarily a bad thing all the time. You might be just more lax, more laid back, you don't really mind as much. But if somebody's always passive in every situation, that might become a little troubling. As I'm going through these three, there's three different ones, I want you to think about yourself and think about maybe where you fall, generally. Next one is aggressive. And we all know probably that word better. The definition of this is pushy and offensive. And I'll go back to that example that I gave with the movies, right? If most of the people in your friend group want to watch Spider-Man and you want to watch Batman, you are going to make it known. You are going to be loud. You are going to be aggressive and pushy and maybe offensive to some of your friends. And you might say, no, I don't care what you guys want to do. Like, we're doing this. Let's go. Right? Aggressive can sometimes be looked at as bossy, but not all the time. But it is a louder, more pushy type of manner. And then the last one is assertive. And the definition of this is clear and confident. Okay? You're not yelling, you're not screaming, you're not overbearing, but you're also not sitting back and just letting things go all the time. Okay? So I can talk about an example with a movie, but it's not as serious, right? If somebody borrowed your AirPods and you want them back, you would not yell at them, and you would probably not say anything and let it go, but you would probably say in a clear and confident way and giving detailed direction, like, hey, I let you use my AirPods. I told you I wanted them back, and I haven't gotten them yet. So if you can just give them back to me by later today after school at 3 o'clock, I'd really appreciate it. Boom. Done. All right? So being assertive is somebody who stands up for themselves, but not in an aggressive way, is very clear and confident in their manner. So when we're in school, sometimes I like to give the example of, the next time your parents or whoever you live with is yelling at you to clean your room, because we don't like to clean our room, right? I remember when I was in high school, my answer to my mom all the time was, it's not your room, it's mine. You don't sleep in it, I do. So if I want it to be messy, then who cares, right? I'd like yell back at her because she was yelling at me, right? My mom was being aggressive, and I decided to be aggressive back. And I want you guys to think about a time where you became aggressive back to your parents. Did it work out in your favor, or did you maybe get into a little bit more trouble than you really would have, right? So I guess my challenge for you guys is, instead, if that happens or something like that happens again, instead of coming at that in an aggressive way, maybe try and be assertive and say, you know what, Mom, you're right. I should have cleaned my room when you told me to last night. I was super tired and I had so much homework. Would it be okay if I clean it in 30 minutes? I just really want to be able to shower, listen to some music, and then I'll definitely get my room cleaned. Now look, I'm not saying it works every time, right? Your mom might be like, no, get in your room right now and clean your room, right? But you will notice that people respond differently in a more positive way, for the most part, not all the time, when you are assertive as opposed to aggressive. And when you're passive, people usually don't respond or answer you at all because you're more in the background. Perspectives. Perspectives, another word for that, views. Okay, it's the way that you perceive and the way that you view things. And there are three basic types of perspectives. And you could think about this politically, but this isn't just about politics, it's about anything. A radical perspective means lots of change. So it's completely different from the norm, from what it's always been. Lots of change. Traditional perspective likes things the way that they are. No change at all. It's always been what it's always was, and it needs to always be. And then we have moderate perspective. In between, less extreme, right? You have the radical on one side, you have the traditional all the way at the other extreme. The moderate's kind of more in the middle. You can see both sides, and depending on the situation, you kind of view it that way.